Hi there, I'm Nick, a former Amazon bar raiser, and in this video I'll describe the differences of the Amazon interview for a product manager versus a technical product manager. You may think that the two interviews are similar with slight technical differences. That cannot be further from the truth, and I'll break down exactly how these interviews differ in three parts. Part one is I'm going to describe the parts of the interviews that differ. Part two, I'm going to give you specific examples of questions you will hear in each of the two interview types. In part three, I'm going to describe how the two interview types are similar or the same. All right, before we start, let me give you a visual to hold in your mind throughout this video. And that visual is the visual of a clock. If I'm a PM, I care that this clock tells time accurately and that the customers like it. That's pretty much all I care for. And I don't know how to service or how this clock works. I maybe can change the battery if the battery runs out, or I can change the time back an hour, forward an hour for daylight savings time, but that's the extent to which I understand how this clock works. On the flip side, if I'm a TPM, I know the gears inside this clock. I know how they work. I'm not an engineer. I can't build those gears. But if the clock breaks, I know how to unpack this panel in the back, evaluate what's wrong, and tell the engineer that they should maybe look at this part to fix it. That's the difference between the product management role and the TPM, technical product management role, at a high level. Now, with that out of the way, let's start with part one. How do the PM and the TPM interviews differ? There are four major areas which I'm going to walk through one by one and evaluate the differences between the two interview types. The first area is system design. If you're a TPM, you're expected to know system design. If you are a PM, you're not expected to know system design. It's that simple. Knowing system design means understanding how the mechanism works of your product. You would need to know what your storage solution looks like, what your authentication system is, what does your compute cloud look like, how do they communicate with each other, so on and so forth. If you are a PM, you need to know none of these things. You don't worry about that. The second area of difference is your technical depth. If you're a TPM, you're showcasing a lot of technical depth. If you are a PM, you have basic depth. Specifically, as an extension to some of the points I've made in system design, you need to understand your technical stack deeply. You need to know how your APIs work, what's your auth system. For your storage solution, do you use Supabase or Dynamo or Redis or what have you? For a PM, you need to worry about none of those things. Your technical depth is primarily including things like UI, customer roadmaps, journey maps, pain point and bottlenecks for customer acquisition flow, so on and so forth. The third difference in the interviews is the extent and the frequency with which you communicate with your engineering team. If you're a TPM, you're talking to these folks daily. You are sitting next to them and you're communicating with them tactically and deeply. If you are a PM, you're talking to your engineers maybe during every milestone review, at a roadmap level, and much more infrequently. And the fourth different area is the overall product focus. If you're a TPM, you worry about technical feasibility, how things work, about scaling the product. You're not quite as technical as an SDM or as a solutions architect, but you're kind of close. You're second to that almost. And if you're a PM, your product focus is on delighting the customer and on the business impact and shipping the product on time. So to go back to my clock analogy, if you're a TPM, you know and you worry about how the clock works, what the clock mechanism looks like, how the gears are churning. You're not supposed to build these things, but you know how they work, and you go tell the engineers when these components and these cogs are broken. If you are a PM, you worry about the overall process. You worry about the trains running on time. You worry about the business impact. You coordinate things, and to use an airport analogy, you take care of the planes taking off and landing on time. All right, this takes us to part two, where I'll share with you specific questions that illustrate the difference between the TPM and the PM interviews. On the TPM interview, you can expect to hear questions like, how would you design a feature to reduce the buffer time of Prime Video globally? Or are you launching a recommendation engine in a low bandwidth country, a low bandwidth territory? How are you going to design the architecture to accommodate for that? And a third example is your API team is getting slammed, they're getting throttled during peak loads. How are you going to work with them and fix this issue? And on the other side of the coin, the PM technical/functional questions would look differently. One example is you are launching a gift recommendation feature. How are you going to validate the MVP? Or sales data is underperforming. How do you evaluate what went wrong? Or a stakeholder is blocking you. How do you align with them and unblock the project? So you can see that even though this is the same job family, the questions are wildly different. To use another analogy, the PM is all about sticky notes and user journeys and customer delight. And on the other hand, the TPM is about understanding how the system works, how the product works, what the dashboards look like, being able to interpret them, and then flagging up, escalating to the engineering team to fix whatever something goes wrong or to improve whatever something else needs to be improved or scaled up. By the way, you can simulate many more such functional/technical questions via GPT or your preferred AI of choice. I have discussed this in other videos. I'll leave a note, a timestamp in this video here as well, so you can take a look at it. But it's a very fun exercise to feed in your resume, feed in the job description, and ask GPT to come up with these simulated technical questions. GPT and the other AI agents out there do a fantastic job at simulating these questions. Great. Now let's talk about part 3, the things that don't change across both interviews. And those things are the Amazon leadership principles. You will have to convince the Amazon interview team that you raise the bar for the level you're interviewing for. And that bar is the same regardless of the job function you're interviewing for. There is no difference in, let's say, the L6 bar between a PM and a TPM. And to carry my point further, there's also no difference between a level 6 lawyer and a level 6 salesperson or a business person or an engineer. You need to demonstrate the same bar raising impact irrespective of your job function. It's ironic that this part 3 that I've left for last is actually more important for you getting hired at Amazon than the functional differences and the functional parts that I talked about so far. Let me give you an example. If as a TPM, I bomb my system design and other technical parts of the interview, but I raise my leadership principles bar at Amazon, Amazon is going to no hire me for a TPM, but they will find me a PM role somewhere else in the company because functional skills are teachable, leadership principles and raising the bar is not. Conversely, if I'm an exceptional technical product manager and I knock it out of the park in all my technical questions and my depth and my scope and API knowledge, you name it, I can even code for fun, that doesn't matter if I lower the leadership principles bar. And in that case, Amazon's not going to give me a chance to interview with another team. They're going to just put me on a cool-off period, on a cool-off list, and ask me to come back and talk to them 6 or 12 months later. I've discussed the importance of the leadership principles in many other videos. I'm going to put another timestamp in this video as well for you to take a look. The takeaway is do not ignore your leadership principles. They're incredibly important and will determine if Amazon is going to hire you or not. You must clear the bar, very similar to jumping over hurdles and obstacles. That bar is equally high regardless of what position you're interviewing for. All right, now that you understand the difference between the Amazon PM versus Amazon TPM interview, you're ready for your next step in your Amazon interview journey, which is to score your star interview response and find out exactly if it raises the Amazon bar. And you can do that for free in less than 30 seconds. Watch this video here next where I walk you through how this tool that I recently launched works. And good luck. I'll see you there soon.